don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Hi. How's it going? Hayward. Hey, Nate. So many people. Good morning. Yes, sir. You gonna be 4 days a week now, or are you just here today? Today is Isaiah's birthday. Yes. I don't know if he's here, but he tells me every day that his birthday's coming up. So you don't think he's here? Oh well. When we get to his class, I'll just show him. Glad I didn't make cookies or anything. Gone to waste. Do 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 do. Nothing is cooperating with me today. It's so frustrating. What page is that? Hello. It's amazing to me how often people come into the wrong room. My graphical purchase. Nope. I want to. How do I do this? Save this PDF. Oh, okay. Whatever. I don't care. This is annoying. Really, it didn't work. Why is nothing cooperating? Okay. I got 4 dum-dums left if you guys want them. Julius left them in here last week. I've been trying to grab them. You're very welcome. Let me get this plugged in before I let anyone in because I know it's gonna not want to cooperate. Yeah, okay. Oh, come on. This thing is such a pain sometimes. Corey he's not in the room and he's not physically here. Where is he? I mean, he was in classes though last week, like virtually, but he's not. Right. He hasn't come in the building. He's been in classes, but not in school. Hello, folks. Oh, no, we turn that. I'm very sad about that. What's up? We will have a spring break. Yeah, it's like the first full week in April, the week of the 5th. Mm-hmm. It's April. But we only have, it's actually like, not that. I was looking at our calendar. I feel like this is the time of year that just drags by for the most part. But let's see. Next week is a full normal week. The week after that, we have an early release on Friday. The week after that, we have an e-learning day on Monday. Then we have a full week that's normal. And then the next week, that Friday is an early release and then spring break. So that Friday, yeah. Yeah, it says e-learning. I mean, you'll still have stuff to do, but oh, here comes Corey. E-learning for all classes on an e-learning day. On early release day, you just don't have your afternoon classes. We've got a lot of abnormal days. I feel like that kind of helps though. Like it kind of helps it not feel like it's dragging by so much. Okay, let me do attendance here, folks. Ian is in person. Corey is virtual. Christian, virtual. Brendan, virtual. Hayward, right here in front of me. Troy, skipping school. Eli, virtual. Nate, in person. Chip. Sterling. Wait, I thought I saw Sterling. No?
I'm here.
Oh my gosh, where I don't know how I just like completely skipped over your name. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. I was like, Sterling's always here virtually. What's going on? Nothing. I'm just blind, apparently. Also, we can totally turn on the lights here if you guys want to, and you can turn that on. I'm not like in the dark just because I love it. I just didn't turn anything on today. Okay, so first thing, I'm going to show you guys, I told you we'd have some kind of quiz grade for each 5 chapters, and that's pretty much true. We're not going to have a quiz on chapters 6 through 10, but let me show you on Canvas what we're going to do instead. Let me share my screen with you here for just a minute. So you guys are going to take notes, and I would encourage you to keep doing it. Ooh, what did I do there? I encourage you to keep doing it as we're reading, and we're going to start chapter 6 today. Oh my gosh, nothing is working for me today. It's so frustrating. Okay. You're going to create notes on these 5 chapters, but what kind of notes you create is totally up to you, and you can use your creativity on this. You can choose to do like a standard outline of each chapter with bullet points, subpoints, that kind of thing. Sort of like a lot of you did for the timelines when we were doing Hamlet. You could do a flow chart that shows the progression of events from one chapter to the next. You could do visual notes that illustrate the most important things from each chapter. Like literally you could draw pictures of what happens. You can create outlines of important characters, setting, plot, everything like that. It's totally up to you how you arrange your notes, but each chapter does need to be covered, and you need to make sure that however you arrange your notes, it's clear that you understand what's happening in each chapter. So we're going to start reading chapter 6 together today. We might get through the whole thing, maybe not. We're not going to have another reading day for a week next Tuesday. But it's going to be your responsibility to read chapter 7 through 10 on your own. And, you know, you can use Spark Notes or Schmoop or whatever to help you. You'll also have next Wednesday to work on it, as well as time after your quiz on Friday, your vocab quiz.
We read 6 through 10 on our own.
Well, we're going to read 6 together today, or at least most of it. But then the rest of it you're going to read on your own. Quiz? Yes. Pretty confident I did. I'm glad you brought that up. Tomorrow is a success session, and you know, we'll come in and take attendance. And if any of you have not submitted your chapter 1 through 5 quiz, then you'll stay and work on that. It's still at a point where you guys don't really have enough grades yet to be missing 3 or more. And I think most of you are either doing well or haven't turned anything in which case you have like probably a 0 for the class. So you'll want to make sure to get the chapter 1 through 5 quiz turned in if you haven't already. And if you haven't, then you'll stay here tomorrow and work on that so you can get it turned in. It was due yesterday, so you can still get a 90 today. You can still get an 80 tomorrow if you turn it in then. So we'll deal with that tomorrow, but just wanted you to be aware so that if you want to finish it today so that you don't have to stay tomorrow, you can do that.
What assignment are you talking about?
The quiz. The chapters 1 through 5 open note quiz that we started Friday, and then it was due yesterday. Okay, any questions on any of that before we start reading together? Okay, I think I did say that I was going to try to make Tuesdays and Thursdays reading days. That's not always super practical, trying to like fit into this rigid schedule. And also we're doing some stuff on Thursday that I think is kind of fun and that y'all will probably enjoy. So you'd probably rather do that than read out loud together anyway. All right, we're going to start reading chapter 6, and it should be fairly easy to remember where we got cut off last time because chapter 5 ended on sort of a cliffhanger. I don't think anyone was on the edge of their seats or anything, but Henry comes in after Victor has been sick for this whole long time because he, you know, couldn't stand the sight of his creation, and it made him literally sick, and he literally just sat around for months at a time trying to recover from the horror of it. So Henry comes and takes care of him, and then he's like, hey, I got a letter for you. And that's where we ended, which actually really reminds me, I don't know if you guys know that I used to be homeschooled when I was a kid, just for 2 years. I wasn't like the Mr. Nykerk who did it the whole time. But we had, when I was homeschooled, we had Bible class. And there's some chapter in the Bible that ends, because I remember like my mom reading out loud, and the end of the chapter was, and he said to them in Aramaic, and that's it. Like, what a cliffhanger. What did he say? And I don't remember now. I just remember the cliffhanger. Tales from homeschooling. Okay, so we're going to pick up with chapter 6 here. Hang on one sec. Let me see if I can get rid of this part. Can I? Yes, I can. Mike just reinstalled Adobe on my computer, so I don't remember how anything works. No, she wasn't gonna become, my dad was and is a minister. So we had Bible class. I don't remember very much of it at all, but yeah, that was a real thing. All right, Clairville, Henry then put the following letter into, I think we're missing a word here, into his hands, my hands. It was from my own Elizabeth. Elizabeth, AKA wife, sister, cousin, whatever she is. My dearest cousin, you have been ill, very ill, and even the constant letters of dear kind Henry are not sufficient to reassure me on your account. You're forbidden to write, to hold a pen. He's so sick he can't hold a pen. That's pretty bad. Yet one word from you, dear Victor, is necessary to calm our apprehensions. For a long time, I thought that each post would bring this line, and my persuasions have restrained my uncle from undertaking a journey to Ingolstadt. So his dad's wanting to come visit to check on him, because if you guys remember, he hadn't been home for like 2 years. He'd been so obsessed with working, and this was before he even made the creature. So he didn't visit home for 2 years because he was just so absorbed in school, and then he created this creature and fell ill for several months. So they have not heard from him. I'm sure they're worried about him. Clearly dad's wanting to come pay him a visit and make sure he's okay, but Elizabeth is trying to make sure he doesn't. I've prevented him encountering the inconveniences and perhaps dangers of so long a journey. Yet how often have I regretted not being able to perform it myself? I figured to myself that the task of attending on your sickbed has devolved on some mercenary old nurse who could never guess your wishes, nor minister to them with the care and affection of your poor cousin. Yet that's over now. Clerval writes that indeed you are getting better. I eagerly hope that you will confirm this intelligence soon in your own handwriting. Get well and return to us. You will find a happy, cheerful home and friends who love you dearly. Your father's health is vigorous, and he asks but to see you, but to be assured that you're well. Not a care will ever cloud his benevolent countenance. How pleased you would be to remark the improvement of our Ernest. Ernest is another brother, and he's like the least important character in this whole thing. Like, we don't really know very much about Ernest at all, and at the end, it doesn't tell us whatever happened to him, just so you know. I feel like if I were an editor, I'd be like, can you just cut out Ernest? He doesn't contribute anything to the story, but whatever, I'm not the editor. He is now 16 and full of activity and spirit. He is desirous to be a true Swiss and to enter into foreign service, but we cannot part with him, at least until his elder brother return to us. My uncle is not pleased with the idea of a military career in a distant country, but Ernest never had your powers of application. He looks upon study as an odious fetter, aka he does not like school. His time is spent in the open air, climbing the hills or rowing on the lake. I fear that he will become an idler unless we yield the point and permit him to enter on the profession which he has selected. Little alteration except the growth of our dear children has taken place since you left us. The blue lake and snow-clad mountains, they never change. And I think our placid home and our contented hearts are regulated by the same immutable laws. My trifling occupations take up my time and amuse me, and I'm rewarded for any exertions by seeing none but happy, kind faces around me. Since you left us, but one change has taken place in our little household. Do you remember on what occasion Justine Moritz entered our family? Probably you do not. I'll relate her history, therefore, in a few words. AKA, we're just telling this for the benefit of the reader. I'm sure Victor remembers. Madame Moritz, her mother, was a widow with 4 children, of whom Justine was the third. And by the way, Justine is important. She will become important later on. I think in these next 5 chapters, in fact. But now she plays an important part, and so we're figuring out how she knows them, what her deal is. Madame Moritz, her mother, was a widow with 4 children, of whom Justine was the third. This girl had always been the favorite of her father, but through a strange perversity, her mother could not endure her, and after the death of Mr. Moritz, treated her very ill. My aunt observed this, and when Justine was 12 years of age, prevailed on her mother to allow her to live at our house. The republican institutions of our country have produced simpler and happier manners than those which prevail in the great monarchies that surround it. Hence, there's less distinction between the several classes of its inhabitants. And the lower orders, being neither so poor nor so despised, their manners are more refined and moral. A servant in Geneva does not mean the same thing as a servant in France and England. Justine, thus received in our family, learned the duties of a servant, a condition which in our fortunate country does not include the idea of ignorance and a sacrifice of the dignity of a human being. So Justine is this little girl who is part of their family now. Like, she's a servant in their household, but they live in Switzerland. Surprise, surprise. Switzerland is still like so ahead of the game as far as like how they treat people, education, healthcare, everything. Switzerland's a great place to live, and it seems like it always has been. They're like, it's fine to be a servant here. You're not treated as being less than. You're treated really well. And so even though this girl has learned to be a servant in our household, we treat her like one of the family. because her mother hated her. It doesn't really explain why. For some reason, her mother could not endure her. So after her dad died, her mom was just really horrible to her. So Caroline, mom, who is dead now, decided to take her in. Seems like Victor's mom was really a fan of like helping out the less fortunate. She took in Elizabeth, she took in Justine. She seems to really be, you know, pretty a pretty loving and caring person, or she was. Justine, you may remember, was a great favor of yours, and I recollect you once remarked that if you were in an ill humor, one glance from Justine could dissipate it. For the same reason that Ariosto gives concerning the beauty of Angelica. I don't know those people. She looked so frank-hearted and happy. My aunt conceived of a great attachment for her, by which she was induced to give her an education superior to that which she had at first intended. This benefit was fully repaid. Justine was the most grateful little creature in the world. I do not mean that she made any professions. I never heard one pass her lips, but you could see by her eyes that she almost adored her protectress. Although her disposition was gay and in many respects inconsiderate, yet she paid the greatest attention to every gesture of my aunt. She thought her the model of all excellence and endeavored to imitate her phraseology and manners, so that even now she often reminds me of her. Not only did she take her in and give her a job and give her a home, but she also paid for her to have a lot better education than what most servants would have. She really loved her. When my dearest aunt died, everyone was too much preoccupied in their own grief to notice poor Justine, who had attended her during her illness with the most anxious affection. Poor Justine was very ill, but other trials were reserved for her. One by one, her brothers and sisters died. Everybody's dying in this book. And her mother, with the exception of her neglected daughter, was left childless. The conscience of the woman was troubled. She began to think that the deaths of her favorites was a judgment from heaven to chastise her partiality. She was a Roman Catholic, and I believe her confessor confirmed the idea which she had conceived. Accordingly, a few months after your departure for Ingolstadt, Justine was called home by her repentant mother. Poor girl, she wept when she quitted our house. She was much altered since the death of my aunt. Grief had given a softness and a winning mildness to her manners, which had before been remarkable for vivacity. Nor was her residence at her mother's house of a nature to restore her gaiety. The poor woman is very vacillating in her repentance. She sometimes begged Justine to forgive her unkindness, but much oftener accused her of having caused the deaths of her brother and sister. Perpetual fretting at length threw Madame Moritz into a decline, which at first increased her irritability, but she's now at peace forever. She died on the first approach of cold weather at the beginning of this last winter. Justine has returned to us, and I assure you, I love her tenderly. She's very clever and gentle and extremely pretty. As I mentioned before, her mien and her expressions continually remind me of my dear aunt. It actually kind of reminds me of Jane Eyre when we watched that movie, and like her horrible, horrible aunt called her back like on her deathbed, and she thought she was going to apologize, but she was still a jerk to her. And it's kind of the same thing. Like Justine's mom did apologize, but then she'd go back on it and be like, "Oh, it's your fault that your whole family is dead." They're like not a great woman, and it really affects Justine a lot, obviously. But she's still just so like likable and wonderful. I will say, a lot of the main women in this book are also like perfect. They're very like angelic and wonderful and lovely, and don't seem to really have any flaws. I must also say a few words to you, my dear cousin, of little darling William, which is the youngest brother, very young. I wish you could see him. He is very tall for his age, with sweet, laughing blue eyes, dark eyelashes, and curling hair. When he smiles, 2 little dimples appear on each cheek, which are rosy with health. He has already had 1 or 2 little wives, but Louisa Byron is his favorite, a pretty little girl, 5 years of age. So he's probably not much older than 5, if he's older than 5. So that's a pretty big age difference between Victor and him. If Victor is like college age. But that was, not that unusual back then. Now, dear Victor, I dare say you wish to be indulged in a little gossip concerning the good people of Geneva. The pretty Miss Mansfield has already received the congratulatory visits on her approaching marriage with a young Englishman, John Melbourne, Esquire. Her ugly sister, Manon, married Mr. Duvillard, the rich banker, last autumn. I don't know why I just said the wrong thing. Your favorite schoolfellow, Louis Manoir, has suffered several misfortunes since the departure of Clerval from Geneva, but he has already recovered his spirits and is reported to be on the point of marrying a very lively, pretty French woman, Madame Tavernier. She's a widow and much older than Manoir, but she is very much admired and a favorite with everybody. I've written myself into better spirits, dear cousin, but my anxiety returns upon me as I conclude. Write, dearest Victor, one line, one word will be a blessing to us. 10,000 thanks to Henry for his kindness, his affection, and his many letters. We are sincerely grateful. Adieu, my cousin. Take care of yourself, and I entreat you, write. Elizabeth Levinson. Dear, dear Elizabeth, I exclaimed when I'd read her letter, I will write instantly and relieve them from the anxiety they must feel. I wrote, and this exertion greatly fatigued me, but my convalescence had commenced and proceeded regularly. In another fortnight, I was able to leave my chamber. One of my first duties on my recovery was to introduce Clerval to the several professors of the university. In doing this, I underwent a kind of rough usage, ill befitting the wounds that my mind had sustained. Ever since the fatal night, the night he made the monster, the end of my labors at the beginning of my misfortunes, I had conceived a violent antipathy even to the name of natural philosophy. Antipathy. Isn't that one of our vocab words? I think it is. Antipathy. When I was otherwise quite restored to health, the sight of a chemical instrument would renew all the agony of my nervous symptoms. Henry saw this and had removed all my apparatus from my view. He had also changed my apartment, for he perceived that I had acquired a dislike for the room, which had previously been my laboratory. But these cares of Clerval were made of no avail when I visited with the professors. Mr. Waldman inflicted torture when he praised with kindness and warmth the astonishing progress I had made in the sciences. He soon perceived that I disliked the subject, but not guessing the real cause, he attributed my feelings to modesty and changed the subject from my improvement to the science itself, with a desire, as I evidently saw, of drawing me out. But his teacher's kind of realizing that he's not as into science as he used to be, which we know is because it went so horribly wrong for him when he created this monster. But he's just like, oh, Victor's just being modest. He's really great at science. And we gotta get him concentrating on it. What could I do? He meant to please and he tormented me. I felt as if he had been placed carefully, one by one, in my view, those instruments which were to be afterwards used in putting me to a slow and cruel death. I writhed under his words, yet dared not exhibit the pain I felt. Clerval, whose eyes and feelings were always quick in discerning the sensations of others, declined the subject, alleging in excuse his total ignorance, and the conversation took a more general turn. I thanked my friend from my heart, but I did not speak. I saw plainly that he was surprised, but he never attempted to draw my secret from me. And although I loved him with a mixture of affection and reverence that knew no bounds, yet I could never persuade myself to confide to him that event which is so often present to my recollection, but which I feared the detail to another would only impress me more deeply. All right, hang on for just a second. I want to see how much longer. Okay. Because I want to make sure that we have time to go over the vocab that you guys should have done yesterday, but we should have time. Mr. Kremp was not equally docile, and in my condition at that time of almost insupportable sensitiveness, his harsh, blunt encomiums gave me even more pain. This is just like phrases. Gave me even more pain than the benevolent approbation of, I don't understand this sentence. I don't know. I stare if you please, but it is nevertheless true. A youngster who but a few years ago believed in Cornelius Agrippa as firmly as in the gospel has now set himself as the head of the university, and if he is not soon pulled down, we shall all be out of countenance. Aye, continued he, observing my face expressive of suffering. Mr. Frankenstein is modest, an excellent quality in a young man. Young men should be diffident of themselves, you know, Mr. Clerval. I was myself when young, but that wears out in a very short time. Mr. Kremp had now commenced a eulogy on himself, which happily turned the conversation from a subject that was so annoying to me. Clerval had never sympathized in my taste for natural science, and his literary pursuits differed wholly from those which had occupied me. He came to the university with the design of making himself complete master of the Oriental languages, as thus he should open a field for the plan of life he had marked out for himself, resolved to pursue, we're missing a period there. Resolved to pursue no inglorious career, he turned his eyes toward the east, as affording scope for his spirit of enterprise. The Persian, Arabic, and Sanskrit languages engaged his attention. and I was easily induced to enter on the same studies. Idleness had never been irksome to me, and now that I wished to fly from reflection and hated my former studies, I felt great relief in being the fellow pupil with my friend, and found not only instruction but consolation in the works of the Orientalists. I did not, like him, attempt a critical knowledge of their dialects, for I did not contemplate making any other use of them than temporary amusement. I read merely to understand their meaning, and they well repaid my labors. Their melancholy is soothing, and their elevating to a degree I'd never experienced in studying the authors of any other country. When you read their writings, life appears to consist in a warm sun and a garden of roses, in the smile and frowns of a fair enemy, and the fire that consumes your own heart. How different from the manly and heroical poetry of Greece and Rome. So Henry's there studying like Chinese, Japanese, other Asian countries, and like their languages and their literature. And it's kind of getting Victor into it too, mostly just because it's so different than what he is used to. And he kind of wants everything to be different now. He wants to turn away from everything he has been learning, since it led to the creation of the monster. Summer passed away in these occupations, and my return to Geneva was fixed for the latter end of autumn. But being delayed by several accidents, winter and snow arrived. The roads were deemed impassable, and my journey was retarded until the ensuing spring. Slowed down. I felt this delay very bitterly, for I longed to see my native town and my beloved friends. My return had only been delayed so long from an unwillingness to leave Clairville in a strange place before he become acquainted with any of its inhabitants. The winter, however, was spent cheerfully, and although the spring was uncommonly late, when it came, its beauty compensated for its dilatoriness. So just kind of keep in mind here that a lot of time is passing, and we've heard nothing from the monster. We don't know if he's dead. Spoiler alert, he's not. But we don't know what's gone on with him, and Victor's sort of been able to put him out of his mind. But we're passing through a lot of time. We're passing through seasons, and you'd think, I mean, the monster is like an 8-foot tall baby, basically. So how would he survive in this world without knowing how to fend for himself? We'll find out. The month of May had already commenced, and I expected the letter daily, which was to fix the date of my departure, when Henry proposed a pedestrian tour in the environs of Ingolstadt, that I might bid a personal farewell to the country that I had so long inhabited. I acceded with pleasure to this proposition. I was fond of exercise, and Clairville had always been my favorite companion in the rambles of this nature that I had taken among the scenes of my native country. We passed a fortnight in these perambulations. We did this for 2 weeks. My health and spirits had long been restored, and they gained additional strength from the salubrious air I breathed, the natural incidents of our progress, and the conversation of my friend. Study had before secluded me from the intercourse of my fellow creatures and rendered me unsocial, but Clairville called forth the better feelings of my heart. He again taught me to love the aspect of nature and the cheerful faces of children. Excellent friend, how sincerely did you love me and endeavor to elevate my mind until it was on a level with your own. A selfish pursuit had cramped and narrowed me until your gentleness and affection warmed and opened my senses. I became the same happy creature who a few years ago loved and beloved by all, had no sorrow or care. When happy, inanimate nature had the power of bestowing on me the most delightful sensations. A serene sky and verdant fields filled me with ecstasy. The present season was indeed divine. The flowers of spring bloomed in the hedges, while those of summer were already in bud. I was undisturbed by thoughts during the preceding year had pressed upon me, notwithstanding my endeavors to throw them off with an invincible burden. Henry rejoiced in my gaiety and sincerely sympathized in my feelings. He exerted himself to amuse me while he expressed the sensations that filled his soul. The resources of his mind on this occasion were truly astonishing. His conversation was full of imagination, and very often, in imitation of the Persian and Arabic writers, he invented tales of wonderful fancy and passion. At other times, he repeated my favorite poems or drew me out into arguments, which he supported with great ingenuity. We returned to our college on a Sunday afternoon. The peasants were dancing, and everyone we met appeared gay and happy. My own spirits were high, and I bounded along with feelings of unbridled joy and hilarity. Isn't that a happy way to end this chapter? It's not going to stay happy, guys, I promise. I feel like they build this up to be so perfect. Like, oh, life was just good, and my best friend and I were like walking through the countryside and enjoying the beautiful air and the nature and everything. But we were just so happy. And I feel like they're building that up to set us up for a big fall. And you will see over the next few chapters just how big that fall is, because it's significant. Okay, so yesterday during our e-learning day, yesterday during our e-learning day, I gave you guys this vocab list. I'm actually just open that up into another one. I'm going to go through the words right now just so we know how to pronounce them, and then we'll go through each. Do I have this open somewhere else? No. And then we'll go through each of the 10 sentences. So the first one, which we read in this chapter, was antipathy, which is a deep-seated feeling of dislike or aversion. Some people might have an antipathy towards broccoli. Number 2 is writhe, which was also in this chapter, which means to make continual twisting, squirming movements of the body. Writhe around. Number 3 is carnage, which is basically the killing of a large number of people. It's like lots of dead bodies laying around. Number 4, I gotta remember how to pronounce it. Ignominy. I want to say ignominy, and it's not right. Ignominy, which is public shame or disgrace. Number 5 was in this chapter also. Docile, which means submissive or ready to accept control or instruction. Number 6 is genial, friendly and cheerful. Sounds like it would describe Henry Clairville. Number 7 is salutation, which is a word, phrase, or gesture used as greeting. Number 8 is precarious, not securely held in place, dangerously likely to fall or collapse, or uncertain. And that can be, thank you, salutations, Troy. Precarious can be like, if I balance this on the edge of my desk, it's in a precarious spot because it's gonna fall off. It could also be talking about a situation being precarious. Number 9, machination, is a plot or scheme. And number 10 is presentiment, which is an intuitive feeling about the future, especially an ominous one. In fact, if you look at that word, it really makes sense for what it is, because pre usually means before, or it comes before, and sentiment is something to have to do with feelings. So it's like a feeling you get before something happens. So let's take a look at these. Hopefully you all got through them yesterday and can take down the correct answers and use these to study with. Number 1, in order to be voted friendliest in the superlatives contest, you must be blank and easy to get along with.
Genial.
Genial, yes, correct. I think Kinsey wasn't that. Number 2, while I have a serious blank to the idea of teaching middle school, I know that many teachers would be intimidated by setting foot in a high school classroom. I have a serious
antipathy,
yes. Number 3, if you haven't seen this show, you should absolutely watch it. The show Ozark is about a man who resorts to money laundering in order to prevent his family from being the victims of a drug boss's blanks. Which one? Oh, you know what? It's not carnage, but I totally get why you think that. Like that sentence actually works well for that too. So I might have to change that sentence for the quiz. Any other guesses?
machination.
Machination. Yep. His plot. Yeah, I might have to change that one so that it doesn't work for both. Number 4, even though he was acquitted of all charges, he will live forever with the blank of knowing that so many people blame him for these heinous crimes. He will live forever with the
ignominy. Yeah, that word. Ignominy. Yeah.
Yeah, so one that I can. That's okay, Brendan. No worries. One of the kind of funnier excuses I've seen in a while, though. Number 5, her refusal to provide an alibi for the night of the murder put her defense in a blank position. Was it? No.
Precarious.
Precarious, yes. Okay, number 6, kidney stones and shingles are the 2 illnesses that have caused me to literally blank on the floor in pain. Which number? Yes, the one that starts with a W. Writhe around in pain. Yes, and that's true. Number 7, he refused to board the plane because of his blank that the plane would crash. He had a
presentiment.
Yes. Number 8, the cult leader sought out blank recruits who were easy to manipulate and would believe everything he said. You're a cult leader. What kind of recruit would you want?
Docile.
Yes. And actually, like when I look up the pronunciation of that word, it's got 2. It's like Americans say docile, British people say docile. It's cute. Number 9. I don't know why I stuttered over that. A lot of people thought the film should have received an R rating for the gory depictions of blank during the battle scenes.
Carnage.
All right, last one. Only got 1 word left. The old man always gave a nod and a friendly howdy as his blank when he ran into people he knew. Was it? Salutation. Yep. All right. Do we need to go back over any of them? We're good? Okay. All right. Well, y'all keep those and study with them. Make sure that you have your answers written down. We'll do some review for it on Thursday, and then your quiz will be Friday. Okay, so we have 10-ish minutes left. And what I want you to do is just go ahead and get a head start on your notes for you can make notes on chapter 6. So kind of decide what kind of notes you want to do. If you're just going to do like regular outline, if you're going to do some kind of like flow chart. But you can go ahead and be working on that and put in whatever notes for number 6 you're going to do. Anything for the good of the group before I let you virtual folks go? All right, well, I will see y'all tomorrow then.